And I just want to mention that point you just made, Mark, a really good one, because we Cisco tripped over this a few years ago, and that was, we're dealing with agriculture, but the adjacent sectors, banking, insurance, transport, you name it, that are retail, that are dependent on agriculture and good data, really open our eyes. And there's surprisingly very little of it. If you want to call it the supply chain, whatever it is, there's very little data coming from the farm to a lot of these adjacent markets. Okay, open to the floor. Anybody want to? Yes.
From the software side, is XDP your platform, or is it the software components to build it?
So there's an operational aspect to XDP. So XDP largely refers to the operational aspect of it, which is comprised of many components. The core component, certainly from a software developer point of view, is what we call Streambed. And if you go to, I didn't put up a slide at the very end there, but if you go to streambed.io, then you'll get all the information that you'll need. They wouldn't allow me to talk about it here. Too technical, apparently. I can't talk about anything programming related. I've signed something. Yeah, and alarms go off. Yeah. You're going to ask me a programming question, right?
I was thinking,
No, don't do that.
I was just wondering, could you talk a bit more through the provisioning process?
Yes. Yeah.
Just repeat the question.
Yeah, okay. So can I talk more about the provisioning process? So we have both a command line facility, and we also have a RESTful API, where that you can use to communicate. So if a device manufacturer wants to provision devices on our platform, then they ask. We provide them an identity because, of course, you have to authenticate and be authorized. Everything is secure, and then you can choose to connect either that in a multitude of different ways and just push that data. I did not go into actually how we get that data to the farm, which I think is the more interesting aspect of it, because it's a store and forward mechanism, meaning that when the farmer has internet connectivity, let's say they go into town, supposing they don't have great or reliable internet connectivity on the homestead, then they can connect to the platform, to the cloud. It will store a device data that's been provisioned and pull down associated applications, all automatically with no effort by the farmer, such that when they're back at the farm, it will automatically synchronize with the 829 and everything will just work.
So you mean via their mobile app?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and we do that right now. Yeah, yeah. And we think that's another innovation aspect I didn't really highlight, but I kind of really, again, it recognizes that farms live with unreliable internet connectivity, right? Hamish.
Yeah, Hamish from Peartree. Probably to you, Chris. On one of your first slides there, you had about Sigfox as well. So can you just go through what, besides LoRa, Sigfox, NB-IoT, and probably some of the other activity types?
Okay, so the question is just to describe a few other of the LPWAN technologies, the low-powered wide area network technologies. Sigfox is another one. We could absolutely embrace Sigfox as well. We made a deliberate choice with LoRaWAN because of its openness, its interoperability. We're seeing a lot of device manufacturers supporting LoRaWAN and Sigfox. We could well support Sigfox in the future as well. An interesting difference with Sigfox, though, is that their device provisioning process relies on the internet. So your farm must be connected to the internet to service that provisioning. And I've just described how we achieve that, how we get around that problem. So that is one important difference. If you have internet connectivity, then it's no issue. In fact, in a way, you could see us behaving or being Sigfox for LoRaWAN is a good way of thinking about us. Yeah.
I think the other point that we didn't talk about is that LoRaWAN traditionally requires the cloud to decrypt from the Semtech chip on the. So the endpoint encrypts, then puts it into a LoRa packet. It's got to go to the cloud, get decrypted. So what Chris has done is developed that decryption capability actually on the 829. And that means, again, you can completely have a LoRaWAN network on-prem. You don't need the cloud. And that provides a lot of value. Also saves a lot of money because you don't need a separate server, and there's a whole bunch of other things.
So actually, Professor Chris Turney was here earlier. I think he's now left, right? Okay. So he's a climate scientist. He's from UNSW, and we're also doing a project which is non-agricultural related, but using the same technology, XDP, and instrumenting a sub-Antarctic island off New Zealand. It's 3 days south of New Zealand by boat, by small boat. I've been told it's like the Mediterranean, not to worry about it. But that's what we're planning to do in February using the same technology. So you can understand, therefore, the importance for this to be able to operate in a remote, non-internet facing style situation. Now, when a satellite flies over, we can communicate using satellite backhaul.
But the point on that too, besides what you just said, is that LoRaWAN won't work over satellite.
Right.
There's a problem there. So you've got to actually have the intelligence at the edge or on-prem. So that's again why we've done it. So we can use satellite as a backhaul.
Everything runs on that one box. That's the thing to remember there.
Now, you talked about a couple of other things, narrow IoT and 5G, and nobody's brought that up yet. There's a lot of, I guess, the thing about when you're using some of these other technologies, first of all, it's traditionally using licensed spectrum. Licensed spectrum means you need to pay for it. You need to go through a telco. There's a lot of pluses and minuses about that, let's just say. We're trying to hand the keys of the door to the farmer and give them full autonomy. And that doesn't mean that farmers, and there's no application for 3, 4, 5G, narrowband, Cat-M, etc. And the type of things that I can see and envisage farmers wanting to use them for example, the tractors, the machinery, where it deserves its own SIM card. And so the point is we're completely agnostic to the actual protocol that's being used to connect. Cisco is, and always has been, and that's kind of what we're trying to manifest here. We're agnostic to whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. We're agnostic to exactly what the communication protocol is. And what that means to everybody here is you don't have to worry about it. What we also haven't talked about is that this is a Swiss Army knife, this 829. It not only does some of these on-farm capabilities, it's also the backhaul. So we've got 3G, 4G, we've got Ethernet, we'll have 5G, all coming out of the box. You don't have to worry about it. And the other thing about it, for those people in the telecommunications field, you'll know that when you take a technology like that, every country has got its own telco regulations. And you've got to go through approval process in every single country to enable you to sell those products. Cisco's already done that in well over 60 countries, and we'll continue to do that with all of our products. So if you're building applications and sensors that run on the 829, it's already tested, approved, and gone through regulations in over 60 countries. So that's another aspect that a lot of Australian companies fall over. And by the way, I worked for one prior to Cisco for 14 years, where we developed technology here. You step into China, there's a whole bunch of issues that you need to deal with. You go to Northern Europe, again, a whole bunch of issues. We've taken care of all of that. So if you want to focus in your particular area, then go for it, be the best in the world, and we'll hopefully take you into other countries as well. That's certainly Cisco's aspiration.
And the other aspect, and we were talking about this earlier, just related to that, is what happens when things go wrong. Things go wrong. Things have gone wrong for us, I can tell you. We've discovered all sorts of things. Possums really like power supplies. Birds and solar panels really don't mix that well. gosh, I mean, probably I can keep going. But when things go wrong and equipment is damaged, how do you swap out that equipment? What's the process? Is it even possible to actually do that and swap it out with a replacement component? How long will that take? This is Cisco's bag. I mean, it's what they do, right?
We're running the critical infrastructure for banks, for government, for defence, for everything. So this is just part of what we do, and that's pretty important. I mean, farm is a business. There are animals. There's a lot at stake, and I think that's often underestimated. So, with due respect to startups, who we also need the capability to have sparing around the country and 7/24 support, which we have.
Peter Bishop from Cowra. Got a question. One of the things us farmers are pretty reluctant to do is part with our money, and to set something up, we're happy to sort of part with the capital outlay to, as long as we get that return on investment. But how do you plan to monetize your component of it, and what will a user have to pay, or how will that work?
Does everyone hear that question?
Yeah. So basically, how are we going to make money from this? Right. At the end of the day, it's largely a game around data. Now I mentioned before, and please hold me to this, the farmer owns the data, the farmer will consent to data. The farmer should also benefit from the on sale of that data. That's kind of the mantra in a way. But to get there, we have to be on farm and provide on farm connectivity. There's a cost associated with that. It's one we believe is economically viable. You have done it yourself, of course. Already you have infrastructure on. So we're not looking to make a ton of money out of that at all, to be honest. Because it's more important to us that the infrastructure is in place. There will be associated a monthly fee to receive support for that. We talked about the swap out of hardware going wrong and troubleshooting issues. We want to be the one-stop shop in terms of where the farmer goes to resolve that particular problem, rather than you have to deal with many parts. So there's a fee associated with that. And again, it will be economically viable. It has to be, otherwise there's going to be no business. And then thirdly, at the end of the day, I think, that's really where there's some very interesting business to be had in the on-selling of that data, again, with consent and payback to the farmer.
Imagine something like a real estate company wanting to buy the data that represents the moisture holding ability of particular types of soil on that farm compared to another farm.
Fertilizer.
The rainfall, but how well does that soil?
We had a real world inquiry.
Yeah, fertilizer farm, fertilizer manufacturers want to know, the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it is important. So to answer your question, there's an upfront cost to do the installation, have your base. There's some ongoing costs, monthly costs, and then there's data costs. But what we see happening is, obviously, if you only install one use case, you'll get a return. But the next one gets even better, and the next one, and the next one, because you've now built your network once. You've built your power, you've built everything once. Now just, go and put the sensors out for what you are trying to measure. That's what we're aiming for. And also, I should point this out, we are also trying to generate a competitive dynamic in the market. So
that's not me.
That's what happens when you're online. So I'll just give an example with a conversation I had with oil and gas. So these are the adults in the room in terms of IoT. Oil and gas have been doing this for years. The problem is that they're very vertically integrated. So, and I won't name names, but they are paying, in some cases, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for one sensor. And the reason they have to pay that is because it's vertically integrated from one company. It's all proprietary. We believe there's a great opportunity to crack that open. And by building an XDP, we want the market to start competing. So whether it's a water sensor, whether it's a gas sensor, there should be multiple options for a farmer to choose. And based on price, based on quality, and based on a whole bunch of things. So this is the start of us creating that competitive dynamic for agriculture, so that putting the power back to the farmer, so you're getting the best value for money.
So, being a bit of the devil's advocate, if a farmer doesn't give consent for his data to be shared, can he still find value in using your platform?
We believe so. Yeah. We're not holding a farmer. We don't want to hold a farmer to ransom. They should share data because it makes economic sense for them to do so. It's going to improve their business. Farmers are fantastic. I mean, you guys are fantastic. You already talk to each other, right? And I understand it does depend on the type of agriculture that you're involved in, but you do talk to each other a lot. And so if there's that ability to share information in a digital sense as well, then that hopefully will enhance those conversations and be worthwhile. That's the bet that we're making.
I mean, we see this in other industries too. It's basic maths. The more you know about not just your farm, but all the farms around you, the better you can be in terms of determining what you want to do. You want to harvest your crop now, if it's sheep or whatever. The individual data may have certain value, but as you aggregate more and more data, it actually becomes much.
Andrew Coppin from FarmBot. Thanks for your information. I mean, we've been at this for a little while, about 5 years. Got a few thousand sensors on farms on over 500 properties all around Australia, so I think we sort of know a little bit about it. But there's other people in the room, inclusive of us, that are, we've built models based on the technology that's around and available and evolved, inclusive of the ongoing fee for data. So how would you propose that companies like us who are reliant upon that model, I might add, the single biggest thing with farmers that they hate the most is the ongoing fee.
Yep.
How would you propose companies like us, if you're trying to embrace the ecosystem, work with your platform? Because seemingly that would mean there's fees on fees.
So principally, your question is how do you continue to derive money out of your cloud-based systems as well as just being able to sell the sensors as well? Is that correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly we've been massive advocates for our entire existence on a collaborative environment. But, you've got a crossover of business models, I think. And I'm just wondering how you must have thought about this, because anyone else, most people aren't just in the business of selling hardware. Often that's a race to zero.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so I'll give you a concrete example. I don't know if Scott's here or not from Agrios, but I'm sure he won't mind saying this. The conversation went something like, how much is your electric fence sensor? And he said $400. And then he said, well, hang on a second though, am I still going to get the data from it? And we said, well, no, we weren't planning on that. He goes, okay, well, that's $500 then, right? So we paid more to him to make up for that shortfall that he was anticipating for that sensor data. In our model, what we would propose is that we would on-sell that data to any consumer, be it a device manufacturer, any part of the supply chain, another farmer, and so forth, at 1 cent per observation itself. So the price at which we buy the sensors needs to be considerate of that. We might buy them at a higher price, perhaps, I don't know. But then you still have the ability of receiving that data, given, again, the farmer's consent and the ability to negotiate with the farmer the continued use of that platform. We're not looking to, again, replace your app or any of the intelligence in your app. We still want to connect to your app, and if your app is still, in the cloud itself, then we want to continue to that. Does that make sense?
Maybe I can just also explain. As an Agtech developer, if you've got a product, we want to help you in two ways. One is your cost of sale. Okay, assume we start getting XDP out there. It's out there now. You've got, excuse the pun, a fertile ground to go and sell in it, because all you need to do is sell your app and your sensor. You don't have to worry about, is there a network there already? It's there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is just the fact that, and I don't know exactly, your particular requirement, but, let's say you need satellite today. That's a cost. We can hopefully remove some of that cost because we've already got a network there. So hopefully we're going to reduce your cost. The next question then is, what's the value to the farmer? And I think that becomes an individual discussion.
So your Andrew, your satellite today still, I think?
No, we're comms agnostic. We're everything.
You are? Okay, right. Because we did some work a while ago. LoRaWAN connectivity. So you've got LoRaWAN connectivity already? Okay.
Yeah, we have, but it's not. There are parts of the country that doesn't work for us and doesn't work for customers.
Of course. Yes.
So yeah, 70% of what we do is satellite because we're doing a lot in remote areas.
Right. Yeah. Particularly Northwest Kimberley, I recall as well. Everywhere. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Kevin, will the advent of 5G be a game changer? Back when 5G comes in.
I got started now.
So when you hear about 5G right now, you got to understand a few things. Very few people will stand up here and give you a very clear business case for 5G. Very few. The second point is it's a very expensive investment. So I just have put that up there, that there's a lot of companies staking their future on 5G, and the facts of the industry are there's not a clear-cut business case. And that's not me saying this. I can show you plenty of reports. But that's the first point. The clearest business case right now is congestion. So Andy Penn actually will tell you this. He's the CEO of Telstra. His business case is by putting in a 5G base station in Sydney, it's cost effective for him, but you don't really see much of the benefit. But for him, he can get much better bang for his buck for that investment than he can on a 4G base station. Okay. So right now, very little business case. But now let's talk about IoT and 5G, right? So again, this is pretty mixed up. First of all, with IoT, you don't need broadband. In fact, Mariota is what's it, 20 bytes 4 times a day. Okay, and there's plenty of use cases for that. What's already out is Cat-M from Telstra. Narrowband IoT is available. That's not a 5G technology. It's a 4G technology available today. So is 5G going to change the game? Maybe in the future, but there's plenty of options today. There's narrowband IoT, there's Cat-M, there's LoRaWAN, there's Sigfox, there's Wi-Fi, there's free, there's a whole lot of options. So to think that 5G is going to save the day for a sector that's already undervested in technology, I don't think is the issue. I think the issue for farmers is, what can you do today to help me be more productive? And that's what we've got today. We can do this today. We don't need 5G. In 5-10 years' time, I think 5G will kick in. Technically, there are an enormous amount of merits, but it's a massive investment. It's a physical works program, on a par with the NBN. And this is what a lot of people don't tell you. There's a lot of hype behind it. It will happen, but it's not going to happen even in the next 2 or 3. Do you know that the millimeter wave hasn't been allocated yet? It's not allocated in Australia and in many other countries. Telstra will show you benefit in their 5G deployment because they've got extra bandwidth and they're using what's called OFDMA, right? So you will see some speed increment. Do farmers really care whether they're getting more speed to a cow? I don't think so, right? Well, what they care about is coverage. Coverage, that's the key issue. And that's what we're aiming at, coverage and data. Get the data out of there so that, as Mark, I think, very eloquently said, let's take the subjective to the objective. Get that coverage now. When these new technologies roll around, I mean, Cisco's a major provider of 5G core. We'll be there. We'll make sure if it makes sense. I'm sure that there will be 500,000 harvesters that will be connected via 5G in the future. But it won't be in the next 3 to 5 years. Certainly not on the farm.
Thanks, Kevin. Another question probably to Mark, just to change pace a little bit. As a farmer as well, I can see the value in the de-skilling of your staff, particularly with labour shortages out there. But probably also, could you just touch on the peace of mind? You touched on a couple of different future scenarios within your presentation, what you feel of peace of mind and what other tangible benefits or non-tangible benefits do you see?
Yeah, so there is a huge peace of mind factor in all of this, and that's very much an intangible. And I don't know what value you do put on that as a farmer, but I certainly rate that high. To be able to sleep at night is pretty important to me. And you know, the staff we've got are great, but there's a couple of them who are younger and inexperienced, and they just don't have that experience and depth of knowledge and the ability to look at a situation and see that there's clearly a problem there. So to manage your way through that with real-time data there and then is really valuable. So
perhaps I can add to that. I was talking to a farmer who he's probably 40, his father's 70, both living on the farm, both with married and kids and everything. But they both lived on the farm. But I think he said him and his father have never been able to go on a holiday together. One has to be on the farm all the time. And they brought this up as a really strong value proposition. They could leave the farm and look at their dashboard and just look at the dashboard. If it's cool, but, they could go away. So I think there's potential. Obviously, we've still got to instrument, we've still got to do this. But absolutely, it's come out time and time again. Peace of mind is a huge issue.
Wally Barella from HighQuest. Just a quick question to Mark. We predominantly work in the meteorological side of things. And in meteorology, there's lots of models that are used with all this data. What I'm finding difficult is, as you say, you want to de-skill some of your staff. Okay, so you've de-skilled them, and then you've got a bunch of data. So what? What does that mean? How do you model that? How do you, how do you take that into some real life knowledge?
Yeah. Okay. The area that I would use to try and address that question is with the livestock, and through that movement data, through their body temperature, the accelerometer. I'm not sure of the value of that data, but certainly the movement data. I would hope that the industry bodies that we provide levies to are out there at this moment. I'm not sure if they're here today, but looking at this technology and looking at developing algorithms to say, okay, all this data's come in, we've interpreted it. There could very well be an issue with that mob of cattle or that mob of sheep based on their movement over the last 3 days and what's happening. I can't necessarily comment on meteorology, but does that sort of stuff to you? Yeah, I mean, I just can't take a whole bunch of raw data and look at it. Yeah, that's not my skill set at all. I need something to interpret that data.
And it's not our skill set either. Again, we're the platform, that wants to bring on apps that are out there that help make these decisions, such as from Maya, from AgriWeb or wherever, that can help make some of this decision making. And we have Mr. Smith from Terrace Tag also, who provides cattle tracking. So ask him about this as well.
Further on to this question of data, say Mark wants to offer it to whoever, who pays? He's doing it as an industry service. He owns the data.
Yeah.
He's got to get it out of that box.
So our proposal is that the consumer of the data.
No, it's his. He's the consumer. He's offering.
Yes.
So he's offering it to a counterparty
Yeah.
to enhance the value of his cattle. So Mark pay or?
So the simple model that we've devised so far is that the consumer, of the one that receives that data for whatever purpose, is the one paying for it. Now the transaction can go the other way as well.
No. Okay. Mark's in a problem position. He wants to enhance the value of his product.
Yeah.
And he wants to use his data that he owns to enhance the value of, say, the stud bulls or whatever. There's some friction going on between that intention to, you're saying, the consumer or the user. It could be anyone, you know.
Well, but the provider, you know, the recipient of that data is going to do something with that data to give that answer that Mark wants. And he's going to, or he or she is going to be charged for that privilege.
Well, with respect to law, Mark owns the data. He somehow has to get it out of that black box. And there's another friction going on there. If you can get away with it, I'd say good. But
I mean, he owns the data, and let's say you want to use the data. You then negotiate.
No, the scenario was, Mark wants to come to me, I'm a buyer of, say, some of his product, stud bulls, and he's going to convince me to buy them, pay a high value to him, because he's going to give me a whole lot of data associated with that product. So it's
a good question.
It's a really good question. Yeah.
I just think and there's a lot of discussion about this, not just in agriculture, but all the way to Facebook, right? As you know, they're now charged. So I'm not trying to solve this, but one thing I will say is that until we get the data, this discussion won't be had.
No, absolutely. But Mark owns the data. He's invested in this. At this point, there's another friction coming into this transaction. Sure. Anyway, look,
I think it's out of our scope.
It's a really interesting.
It's a good question, but it's out of scope for us. I mean, the banks.
Your client
is
Mark.
Yes.
He owns the data.
Yes.
What are you going to say to Mark if we come to him and say, we'll pay you a lot more for the product, we can get that data?
Up to Mark.
It's his data. Yeah. Okay.
So would we facilitate that transaction is the real question.
For Mark.
Cost to us in facilitating that.
Yes, for Mark, yeah. So you'll charge Mark.
Well, again, what we've done so far is thought about charging the consumer of that data. All right. So this is an interesting idea. I mean, it's not
the games begin. This is where I think this is a really interesting opportunity.
Platforms enable people to transact, essentially. Multiple people to transact. That's what they do. And this is where we want to be. We don't necessarily have all the answers at this point, and I think that's a really interesting scenario. But that's essentially what the platform is about, enabling that.
I could probably help out there a little bit. If the e-tags are actually NLIS compliant, so the National Livestock Identification System, and one owner takes control of the animal with that NLIS tag, then it could be that that data then travels with that tag to the new owner, thereby transferring the information from one owner to the next.
Right. Transfer of ownership, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
I think the key point that we did from a design perspective is not try to answer that question because there's a lot of options, but we've done two things. One is secure it, so it's secure data, and number two, by default, the farmer owns the data.
Oh, I think that's very good. But you model yourself in blockchain. They've got the same issue. So well done. Yeah.
I'm kind of keen to avoid talking about blockchain. Actually, I think it's so hyped. It's
in terms of a business model, they've got the same issue
right.
of who owns the data.
Right. Yeah. But there's no reason why, again, not trying to solve this, why ownership cannot be transferred as well. But anyway, great point. So,
but KPMG, maybe they can.
Yeah.
Yes, you got any comments? I mean, it's
early days, and what we're saying, really, more than anything else, is that this is where the play is ultimately going to end at, right? And we want to facilitate that. We don't have all of the answers necessarily at this point, for sure. Yep. Any more questions, or is it good?
Is that on? Yeah. So I was just going to say there were too many men on the stage, so I thought I.
Fair enough.
And I think we all had good question time, and thanks so much. Really pertinent questions and things to be thinking on. From our perspective, I'm Tina. I'm from Titan Class, so I just wanted to introduce myself because I've been emailing with you all and communicating with you all, and I want to thank you all for being here and for being at the start of this really exciting journey that we're all on. It's a great space to be in, that's for sure. Thank you also to Kevin and to Cisco. They've been absolutely amazing in hosting this event. Also to Justin, I think you spoke so beautifully, so thank you, Justin, and really great to see we're hopefully getting that agricultural passion in there. And thank you also to Mark and for talking about his lovely property Delatarte. I think it's been really good to hear, the more practical side of what we're all doing, and that's what we need more of. So we're hoping to be working with many more of you. Please fill out your feedback forms. That's really important. And have some food and drinks. We really want to talk with you more.
Thank you.